Hello, my name is Clayton, and welcome to episode number 97 of the Watch Dan podcast. I'm a professional dog runner and watch enthusiast talking to his pals about dogs and watches. How's everybody doing? Thank you so much for listening. You know I appreciate it. Yes, almost at 100 episodes. I don't think I'm going to do anything grandiose to celebrate that milestone, however. I started this podcast 4 years ago with the intention of recording every single week, and I'm just hitting 100 episodes now. So I don't feel like I deserve to celebrate that. So we're just going to keep our heads down, keep recording week after week here. Maybe if I can do 52 consecutive weeks of shows, then I'll do some sort of retrospective and celebrate a little bit. But now we're just going to keep working. It's been so much fun to get the creative juices flowing again and think of fun ideas to do for the show. Engaging with so many of you. I appreciate that more than you know. So yeah, we're just going to keep doing that. Really had an odd week out here. I feel like it should be a full moon. It's not, but it definitely seems that way. The dogs I take in my off-leash group have just been a little off balance. I have seen a lot of wild animals too, coyotes on a few different occasions this week, rodents stocking up for the winter. And then I had a dog versus groundhog attack in my own backyard the other day, which was nerve-wracking. When the weather is nice, my two beagles sort of have access to the backyard whenever they want, if we're home. I was chilling out watching TV. And, they're always howling. Two beagles, so, they're going to be making a lot of noise. I have a leader beagle and a follower beagle. So many times they will run outside howling their fool heads off at a squirrel or something. So they did that when I was watching TV. No big deal. And then I start to hear a commotion out there that just doesn't sound good. So I run out and I see that they have a groundhog cornered. My follower beagle is sort of just watching the action, and then my leader beagle is on top of this groundhog. I'm like, oh my God. And the groundhog's as big as they are. So I get out there, and the poor groundhog is screaming. My dog is howling, and I'm screaming. I separate the two. The groundhog was not on the offensive at all. I think it was just wondering, what the hell did I just step into? I picked the wrong yard. So I separate them. My beagle is still obsessed, so she kind of goes around me and goes in for attack number 2. Like, oh, I don't know if she was attacking. She was really just kind of playing with it. She's not mean, but, they're beagles. They have a prey drive, obviously. So I get them separated again. I yell at my dog. My dog, even though she is a leader, has a strong personality, she's very sensitive. So I yelled at her really loud, and she didn't like that. And she kind of backed off, and then they both went in the house. I get both beagles in the house, close the door, and then I go to the window. The groundhog seemed a little shell-shocked, but mostly uninjured. It laid flat there for a little bit, and then kind of, as big as it is, it could really compress, and it went under the fence in a pretty small gap. But, oh my gosh. So then I'm looking my dog over, who had the altercation with the groundhog, and sure enough, she has a puncture wound on her snout. Like, oh no. So I called the vet, and they said, yeah, you know what? She's up to date on her rabies, but you definitely should bring her in for a booster just to be safe. We have seen cases of rabid groundhogs this year. So, oh no. So I bring her in the next day. You have up to 48 hours to do that. So brought her in. Actually, the wound healed up really nicely. You can't even tell where it was anymore at this point, just a few days later. But yeah, that was exciting. So pro tip. If your dog has an encounter with any wild animal like that whatsoever, A, make sure you're up to date on your rabies shots for them, and then B, just get a booster just to be safe. You don't want to play around with rabies. They did not say that our dog had to be quarantined at all, but in some instances that has to happen as well. So yeah, just be careful out there, especially as we get into the fall and winter is coming. You never know what might happen. Okay, main topic time. This might sound pretty cheesy, but I've always said watches are not the best part of this hobby, not even close. The best part for me, anyway, is the community The sense of community, the friendships, the relationships I fostered in 6 years of watch collecting. I think if it were still a solitary endeavor like it were at the beginning, I wouldn't have kept going with watches. I had all of this enthusiasm, all of this excitement when I got into the hobby, and no one in my real life actually cared. My wife didn't want to hear about it anymore. My real life friends and family did not want to hear about it. And to be honest, I didn't want to tell them how much money I was spending. It's embarrassing. So to discover a community online of like-minded people was huge for me. The first community I was a part of was Random Rob, the YouTuber, his Patreon group. And from there, it expanded into this large online universe. And it was also during the pandemic where many of us were isolated. So that was so important to me. So if you're feeling a little disconnected right now and you're not part of an online group, I highly recommend. Many podcasters and YouTubers have Discord groups, Slack groups, Patreon. You can join for free, or it's very inexpensive in most cases. I've been thinking about doing a Discord, maybe as I start to build a larger audience again through regular podcasts, through weekly podcasts of just being consistent. We'll get a Discord going, but that would be awesome. Let me know if you have interest in that. That would be totally free, of course, just somewhere for us to get together and geek out about watches. But anyway, yes, I highly recommend joining one of these groups. Watch enthusiasm. It's addicting. We're obsessive. And I know in these groups, it's a safe space for me to say all of these nerdy, crazy things that most people in my normal life would just look at me sideways about. But in a watch group online, it's totally normal and accepted. And also, there's local groups as well. Look for your local Red Bar chapter. Or maybe you meet people online and you discover that they live relatively close to you. And you can do regular meetups that way. That happened with the Random Rob group. I happened to meet a guy named John who lived 30 minutes from me. We got to talking, and we have met up several times in the last going on 5 years now. Incredible how fast time goes. It's so awesome to have a local watch friend. We cycle through watches, so every time we meet up, it's usually every few months. He has a family. He's busy. Lots going on. We're all busy. So if we can get together 3-4 times a year, that's a major win. And yeah, every time we do, we bring the watches we've picked up since the last time we've met, have a couple drinks, grab dinner. It's amazing. So I highly recommend make this a social hobby. A lot of people in your regular life just don't understand the watch enthusiasm, and we're there for you. So, John, we've gone to a local AD several times. Earlier this year, we went and he bought a Grand Seiko, the Grand Seiko Peacock. As a result of that, he got invited to a Grand Seiko event that was at this local authorized dealer. I have not bought a watch from there in a few years. I've actually been a little critical of that AD in podcasts, going back a couple years. But I must say, I'm just going to say it up front, they have stepped up their customer service game in a huge way. These sales associates are all watch geeks, super fun to talk to. You can just go in there and chill out. So I see myself buying a watch from them in the very near future. Just an amazing experience. They have turned that customer service experience around 180 degrees, in my opinion. So nothing but positive things to say. So yeah, my buddy John got an invite to this Grand Seiko event, and he said, "Hey, you want to come with me?" And I said, "Oh, can I?" I didn't get a formal invite. So he got me on the list +1. So the other night, we went down there and went to a Grand Seiko event to show off their, novelties from this year. They do present at Watches and Wonders. So to show those off, and just a wonderful way to try on some great watches and just mingle with like-minded watch enthusiasts. And also the authorized dealer I mentioned, they just did an expansion. They bought the building next to them and they expanded out into that building. And now the new section is specifically for watches and watch events. It's a great space. All of the watch brands are in there, except Rolex. Rolex still has their own section in the main store, but I think they have Tudor, Breitling, TAG, Grand Seiko. I think like Shinola and a couple other, fashion-y brands, if you will. But yeah, this is a great spot and great for events like this. So I was excited to see the new area. One of my friends had gone to a Tudor event there a couple nights before, and the space looks fantastic. So I was excited to check it out. So I just thought I'd talk about what it's like to go to a brand-sponsored event. I've never quite done that. I've done organized meetups at authorized dealers with the aforementioned Random Rob group. We went to Baltimore a couple years ago and did some brewery tours. We also went to Little Treasury Jewelers. It was sort of an unplanned visit, but several of us went, and we got treated really well there. But this is the first time I've ever gone to an AD for a brand-specific event. So I'm going to take you through what that's like. If Grand Seiko has an authorized dealer near you and they throw one of these events, I highly recommend going. It's just another way to get out there, get away from our phone screens and our computer screens and actually try these watches on. And, you know, obviously it's a watch event. Going to be some baller watches there. So great watch spotting. You can feel comfortable, and I'll get into this a little bit later. You can feel comfortable going up to somebody and saying, "Hey, nice watch. What is that?" Or, "Can I try that on?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, sure." If you do that, you know, just out at the coffee shop or the store or something, you might have the police called on you or something. But no, in this setting, it's totally accepted and totally normal, which is awesome. So, yeah. I'll take you through the evening here. I won't go into detail about too many watches. I will put links to all the watches I talk about, and maybe some I don't even talk about in the show notes, so you can check them out. But yeah, so he and I get there, and there's a guest list. The security guard kind of gets us, "You're on the list?" Like, "Yep, we're on the list." And then they check our names off. And immediately to the left, when we walk in, is Joe Kirk, the brand curator and marketing director for Grand Seiko. He's a legend among Grand Seiko enthusiasts. Sanjay, engineer wannabe, our friend, loves Joe Kirk. And we start talking to him immediately. I have never seen Creedor watches. They are in the Seiko Grand Seiko family. And he is directly behind two Creedor models. They are absolutely beautiful. The GBLT 998 and 999. In rose gold and platinum. Unbelievable watches. These range about $40,000 to $55,000 USD, I believe, somewhere in there. And they are just works of art. They're made in the micro artist studio. They have porcelain dials, hand-painted hour markers. There are not many artisans with the amount of training who are capable of doing this type of work. That's the vibe you get from Grand Seiko, Creedor. And I'll get into this a little bit later, it's a very small business. I think we lose sight of that because Grand Seiko seems to have so many releases on almost a weekly basis. But really, they don't make that many watches, and they are a small business. It's hard to put that in perspective sometimes, but they really are. Anyway, so yeah, all of a sudden we are trying on and taking pictures of $40,000 to $50,000 watches. And Joe Kirk, I bring up the Locomotive because I think that's a very interesting watch. Genta design. And he said, they only made 300 pieces of that. And maybe this is just salesman talk. I'm not sure. But he said, we underpriced that watch. The movement isn't as innovative as some of the movements that we use. But if you look at that watch, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes, the bracelet to case integration is very unique. And he said that was a little tougher to engineer than they thought. So they should have charged more for that watch. And they probably should have made more of them. But hopefully we get more, maybe a non-limited edition of that would be amazing. It's $12,000. So, and I'm sure you can find them cheaper on the secondary market. These are only in Japan, but through Chrono24, you can get your hands on a Creedor watch. It was remarkable to see these. Where else am I going to see Creedor except for a Grand Seiko event like this? So the next watch we come upon is the Grand Seiko Kodo Constant Force Tourbillon SLGT005. It's the second edition that was released this year. $365,000. Limited edition of 20. Platinum and sapphire case. Skeleton dial to see the inner workings of the movement and the tourbillon. I mean, this is a watch I can only dream about, right? And here I am handling and trying on a watch that costs more than my house originally did when we bought it. Incredible. We go down the line. The SBGD 202 Spring Drive 8-day power reserve. Gorgeous watch in rose gold. It's very large, 43 millimeter. Expensive at $42,000 retail. But Joe Kirk was rocking one too. And I love the strap he had it on. And it wears large. If I'm spending that much money on a watch, I would like something that fits me a little better personally than that watch does. But oh, what a beautiful dial. Sort of a brown, like chocolatey dial that sort of glimmers. I think it, like most Grand Seiko watches, evokes some element of nature. And this was like the starry night sky. So there's a bit of that in the dial. And the way, chocolatey brown sort of goes with rose gold. I mean, it's a marriage made in heaven as far as I'm concerned. It was incredible to see that watch, that's for sure. So, immediately right out of the gate, we're like, holy cow, this is awesome. So we're like, all right, before we go and see the watches that we can actually probably afford, a little more realistic, why don't we mingle a little bit, see what else is here? We're both thirsty. So we noticed that there's a bar. It's an open bar, and it's, obviously Grand Seiko is a Japanese company. So that was the theme of the evening. There were Japanese whiskeys lining the bar, Japanese beer, Japanese themed cocktails. They even had a Grand Seiko themed cocktail, the Grand Seiko Spritz, refreshing. It was humid out that night. It was a little rainy, but it was humid. So, Spritz sounds good. Sake, Grand Marnier, lemon, lychee, and maraschino cherry. I had a couple of them, not something I would drink many of. And I didn't feel like they really put a lot of alcohol in it, but it was sweet, and it was good, and it was just really cool. It was festive. And then they had a sushi bar, and the waitresses were coming around, filling our plates with copious amounts of sushi. They reminded me of my grandmother. My grandmother always made sure that your plate was full. You're wasting away your skin and bones. Here, eat more. That's every grandmother, I think, right? But yeah, that was so cute. They were just loading our plates with more and more sushi. And finally, we were like, oh, we're full. We're full. We can't eat any more sushi. But it was so good. Instead of imitation crab meat, real king crab. It just incredible. Incredible food. And so then we go to the other side, which was more of the attainable Grand Seikos that we could actually afford. These models did not cost as much as my house, or even more than my house. Two that I was particularly taken with. We saw many, and I'll try to put links to as many as possible, but the two that I loved, and if I had my druthers, if it was in the budget, I may have walked out with that night. One was the SBGY035, a limited edition of 700 pieces, a manual wind spring drive watch. My favorite thing about these are how thin they are, like 10.6 millimeters thin, I believe. One of my complaints with Grand Seiko outside of the bracelet is that they have some junk in the trunk, many models, like the Peacock that my friend was wearing. That has a keister on it. That's a kind of a thick watch to wear. Even for him, he has bigger wrists than I do. But yeah, there's a lot going on back there. But this was just so thin and wearable, inspired by the sun illuminating autumn foliage. Again, a nature theme with Grand Seiko. So it does have like an orangish brown dial. It's gorgeous. I mean, I really don't have room in my collection for another dress watch. I think the Moser, which I was wearing that night, we'll get into that, the Moser Endeavor, I was wearing that watch at this event. I don't have a place in my collection probably for another expensive dress watch, but my goodness. And, I could just wear it. I'll just wear it out in the woods among the autumn foliage that it's inspired by, right? Who cares? But that piece, unfortunately, was already spoken for, or maybe fortunately. Otherwise, I may have considered it. I think they retail about $8,100. That was a sold piece. That was being handled a lot and hopefully not scratched. I feel sorry for the guy who bought that, or gal. They get it, and it maybe has some marks on it. We know the Zaratsu polishing can scratch pretty easily, right? So, I guess I'm kind of glad I didn't buy that one. But what a beautiful watch. That was released, a couple months ago maybe, and I had been kind of lusting after that one. I love that dial. I have had brown dial watches, and I just really am drawn to them. much like the 8-day that I talked about a little bit ago, but I've had the Tudor Black Bay Bronze, which has a brown dial, the No Time to Die Omega Seamaster. Also reminded me of chocolate whenever I wore it. I love chocolate. So I would love to have one of these brown dials in my collection again, maybe someday. And then the other one that I absolutely fell in love with was the Grand Seiko Evolution 9 Atera Valley SLGA 025, inspired by the emerald green waters of the Atera River in the Atera Valley. Like an emerald teal dial, gorgeous. I think that's the prettiest Grand Seiko dial I've ever seen. The birches are really well done. Obviously, they have so many beautiful dials. This was so striking. And it's also titanium, which is kryptonite for me. I love titanium watches. I think my collection will someday evolve into being entirely made up of titanium watches. I'm not there yet, but we might be heading that way. This watch is so strikingly beautiful. It was the star of the show. I mean, everybody was trying this on. $10,500. John and I were like, the wheels were turning. I actually had permission from my wife. She's like, you got money? Buy a watch if you want. Which is, again, mixed signals from her all the time. She yells at me for how much money I spend in the hobby, but then she gives me free reign to buy them if I want to. I think it's just so she can yell at me. Don't you have enough reasons to yell at me? Anyway, I did not pull the trigger. That is not a limited piece. So hopefully it will be there in the future and I can go and drool over it some more. And maybe one day. Screw down crown. I mean, I would get more wear out of that than the SBGY 035 by far, I think. But and that is more my style. I'm not sure of the staying power of a dial like that in the collection. That's the only thing. In 5 years, will I feel differently about such a colorful dial that maybe doesn't go with everything? Maybe long-term keeper success is boring watches. I don't know. But this watch is not boring. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful. The whole event was just great. Joe Kirk then gave a presentation. I'm not going to go into it, but about the manufacturing facility. It's beautiful. You can get tours of it. The nature around there is just gorgeous. Again, Grand Seiko is a much smaller company than we think sometimes, I believe. Not many artisans and watchmakers are qualified to make these watches. It takes years and years of training. So it's just incredible that not many artisans work for Grand Seiko, and yet it does seem like they come out with so many new watches every single year. But really, they do not make all that many. I think the figure is around 50,000 watches a year, which is small in the grand scheme of things when you consider that Rolex makes over 1 million. So, but the event was really outstanding. And then swag. You want swag when you go to one of these events, right? Free stuff. We love free stuff. This was really unique. There was an artist doing kanji characters. You could pick a saying, some were like perseverance, love, all these things. And then she would draw out the character for you. She would paint it. She was using a paintbrush and paint on this paper. It was really quite stunning. So I was like, I sat down, waited my turn in line. I sat down and I said, what should I get? And she said, you can get a saying. You can do a flower, a plant, something like that. And I thought of juniper. And she's like, somebody actually did juniper just earlier this evening. So great. I can do juniper for you. It's a tree, but also that's the name of my dog who got in the scuffle with the groundhog. So I was like, that's a great idea. I'll do that. And it's beautiful. I'll post a picture of it on my Instagram. And then my friend John sat down to get his, I can't remember exactly what he had written out in kanji. But then as I'm waiting for him, I notice a guy eyeing my watch. And like I said before, that is totally normal and commonplace in this setting, right? We want that. Finally, he came over and he said, what watch is that? And I said, it's a Moser Endeavor. He's like, I thought it was a Moser. And he's like, do you mind if I take a picture of it? I was like, you can do more than that. Try it on. And he was smitten. I think he would have bought it off of me right then and there. I mean, he said, this is the most beautiful watch I've ever seen. It's the concept dial. I've talked about it before. For such a simple dial, It's really not a simple watch at all. In different lighting, the dial changes. In dim lighting, it looks like a magic orb crystal ball. In other lightings, it looks a little more natural. And he couldn't get over it. And the movement is, of course, absolutely gorgeous. A red gold rotor. I mean, stunning. And he fell in love with it. Sometimes I forget like how special that watch is. I think maybe we feel that way with our watches. We get sick and tired of them. I've thought about selling that watch for inferior watches just because I get bored sometimes, but it takes something like this to put into perspective, like how lucky I am to own this watch. It's a showstopper. For such a simple watch, it is a showstopper. And for watch geeks to fawn over it, like renewed my love of the watch, of the Moser Endeavor for sure. But yeah, this guy, smitten. I mean, he kept saying it's the most beautiful watch he's ever seen in his life. I told him I got it through consolidating a bunch of pieces. And I think it got him thinking on that path too, like, oh, maybe I need to do that. Maybe I need to consolidate a bit and get me a Moser. So yeah, we talked to him for a while. He loves Grand Seiko. He was wearing the SBGJ 273 high beat GMT, beautiful red dial. That was a gorgeous watch. I tried that on. That wore really well on me. So overall, the night was just so much fun. John and I left there kind of buzzing. We went next door to a restaurant and had a couple drinks. It was pouring rain, and we both have, semi-long drives, so we couldn't imbibe too much, and I had to work the next morning, so did he. But yeah, we ate, we drank, we had a great time. And again, having a local friend to share the hobby with, even though we don't see each other that many times per year, is just so special. Love you, John. Thank you for inviting me to this event. And if Grand Seiko has an authorized dealer near you and you see that they are having one of these events, if you get an email invite, I highly recommend to go. I'm not saying the experience is going to be the exact same as it was for us, but it was really special. You don't have to buy anything. And, like I said, the sales associates at our local authorized dealer are so knowledgeable, so much fun to just chat with watches about, that it made the whole night just so much fun. And one of the sales associates was wearing a Breitling Chronomat. I have talked about being very interested in the Detroit Lions Chronomat. I've never tried a Chronomat on. I tried his on, and I can report that it wears amazingly well on me. So more information about that coming, but that Detroit Lions Chronomat might be a reality sooner rather than later. But yes, have you gone to a Grand Seiko event in the past at your local authorized dealer or a boutique? If you happen to live near a boutique, there is a Grand Seiko boutique in Boston that I have been to. I bought the Sea of Clouds from there. Have you been to one of these events? Was it better than what I'm talking about? Was it worse than what I'm talking about? Would love to hear your experience. Or have you been to events sponsored by other brands? Like I said, Tudor does them. Breitling is doing one next week at this authorized dealer. Topper did an NFL-themed Breitling event last weekend. My friend Jay, sales associate there, dressed up as a football player. She looked awesome. She Speaks Watch on Instagram. It's a great follow. She is amazing. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. Get out there in the community, try these watches on, meet great people, get swag, eat food. These events are so much fun. All right, we're going to end it there. Thanks again so much for listening. I say it every week. Feel free to reach out any number of ways. YouTube, Instagram, shoot me a text message. The link is in the show notes. The link to all of the methods of communication are in the show notes. Leave me a 5-star review, like and subscribe on YouTube, helps grow the podcast, and maybe one day we can start our own Discord of like-minded watch geeks. All right, we'll talk to you on the next episode of the Watch Dog Podcast. See you later.